other aspects of the importance of the glaciers was that as they were receding, they left an incredible variety of minerals and different types of rocks that impart lovely, that enhance the aromatics of our wines, the flavors, even the textures of our wines. So key things, that the effect on the microclimate and the soil. Okay. No, I'm not advancing. Okay, here we go. Let's try this. Yay. Okay, so even though the Finger Lakes were a booming wine region back in the 1800s, everyone at the time thought it was too cold to grow the classic European grape varieties. So although the industry was booming, the grapes that were being used were the native grapes. Picture Concord, Catalba, similar to Welch's grape juice. And at the time, the public was just fine with that. You know, I don't think we'd be focusing and having a discussion about food and wine pairings and artisanal cheeses and wines. Hey, Amber Alert. If had we not had this switch over to the vinifera. But the problem with growing the vinifera in the Finger Lakes region, not only did we have the problem of the colder temperature, it is a cool grape growing region, but we have a tiny pest called phylloxera, a tiny insect that co-evolved with the native grape variety. So it didn't destroy the native grapes because it co-evolved, but these insects, whenever they're in contact with the European grape variety, would completely destroy the vine. And that, in fact, is what happened in the 1800s. Someone had the bright idea to send some native cuttings to a colleague over actually in the Rhone region of France. And the phylloxera hitchhiked over there and completely destroyed the European vineyards. So they were in a panic of what to do. They attempted to cross the native grapes with the European grape varieties. And then finally, someone had the idea to actually graft the native variety, the native grapes with the vinifera. So you'd have the native roots resistant to the phylloxera and have the scion of the vinifera, of the better quality grapes and resulting wine. So it was this fact of being able to find the perfect native grapes, because they needed to be cold hardy enough for our cool climate, that my grandfather was able to succeed. Going back to Thomas Jefferson's time, you know, people had been trying to do this, and he actually had his PhD from Russia and did his PhD work on growing European grape varieties, the Vitis vinifera, in colder climates. So he was able to bring his expertise over. Unfortunately, he spoke 6 languages, and English was not one of them. So it was definitely a bit challenging to convince other growers and winery owners to make the switch. But he believed that he wanted to prove to the world that we could do this. And so, in fact, we had over 60 different grape varieties from European Vitis vinifera grape varieties. So we did talk about the lake effect. So not only are we benefiting from the microclimate influence of the Finger Lakes, but also you can see the proximity to the Great Lakes, which has an impact. And we talked a little bit about the grafting. And so the union of that scion, that vinifera scion, with the native grapes is particularly sensitive to the cold. And my grandfather improved on this technique where we actually create this little blanket of soil in the in the late fall, late fall, to protect this this more sensitive area, so that invention of this plow was very important, and also this soil then needs to be pulled away in the spring. So you can see here he's actually by hand, picture like a little puzzle piece that has to be fitted together just perfectly. And then that needs to grow together for a while before it can be planted. And in Europe now, so we created the problem with phylloxera. I mean, Americans created the problem with phylloxera, but fortunately, we were also able to solve the problem. So now around the world, with very few exceptions, most European Vitis vinifera grape varieties, even grown not in Europe and in other areas, other countries, are grafted onto American rootstocks because of this tiny insect. So we caused the problem, but we were able to solve it as well. So a little more about the historical significance. We have some of the oldest vinifera plantings in the country. In fact, our Pinot Noir vines have been documented to be the second oldest Pinot Noir vines in the country. And although California got a head start growing the vinifera grape varieties, they unfortunately had a second wave of phylloxera come through about 100 years after the initial wave. So the initial wave in California was about the 1880s, and literally about 100 years later, they had another wave. And what happened was, although they had grafted the vinifera vines onto native rootstock, the native rootstock that was used was not sufficiently resistant to the phylloxera. So it's a huge deal in the 1980s, where whole vineyards had to be replanted. And it's a very labor-intensive, very costly endeavor, because it takes about 3 to 4 years for those vines to start to bear fruit. We also are growing some very unique ancient grape varieties, the Arcatzelli. We were one of the first to grow the Grüne Veltliner here in the States. And also we were the first to use all the classic French Champagne grape varieties for traditional Méthode Champenoise sparkling wines, which we produced next door to Dr. Frank's at the 1886. And in fact here, so this is the 1886 building, again, right next door to Dr. Frank's. The upper right picture, it used to be called the Western New York Wine Company back in the 1800s. And so 1886, or Chateau Franc, which is what we used to call it, is one of the oldest existing winemaking structures in the country. And this is where we're producing our world-class handcrafted sparkling wines. You can see in the bottom, and these, the building was built in 1886, and the natural fieldstone acts as the perfect environment to produce and age our Méthode Champenoise sparkling wines. And you can see they are stacked in the cellar there. For our vintage sparklers, we're giving them about 4 years on the yeast or entourage. And then you can see the riddling racks, which is part of the process for the traditional Méthode Champenoise. Again, a little more of a historical perspective here. My grandfather truly felt that Americans deserved the best of everything. Was basically a war refugee, escaped Russia, then to Austria, then Germany, and finally arriving in the States in the early 50s. By 1960, but he was horrified by the horrible wines that the Americans were drinking at the time, because again, he felt Americans deserved, why were they drinking these horrible jug wines when they really deserved, he thought, the best wines. So he established the American Wine Society back in 1967. And this is the oldest consumer-based wine organization. in the country with over 7,000 members around the country. If you look at that top picture, these were the founding members there. The gentleman to the left is Walter Taylor. And he established Bully Hill Winery, which you might have heard of if you've been to the Finger Lakes or familiar with the Finger Lakes. And there they grow only the French, what are called the French hybrids. So these are the crosses of the native grapes and the European grape varieties, which my grandfather absolutely hated, and more than hate. I mean, he really did not think that they were good for us. And yet they were able to be, involved in the same organization. And so kind of a nice little footnote there, I think. Bottom picture, Andrei Chelychev and my grandfather were very friendly, both fought in the Russian Revolution, both had similar backgrounds. While my grandfather was considered the father of vinifera on the East Coast, Andrei Chelychev was considered spearheaded the quality focus of the California wines, moving away from the jug wines and moving towards high quality wines. He started with the BV, the George de la Tour series, in particular for the Cabernet Sauvignon. And both of them were inducted in 2001 into the Wine Spectator Hall of Fame, which was a list of 40 innovators in the wine and food industry that had the greatest impact on the wine and food industry. And along with my grandfather and Andrei Chelychev, Robert Mondavi was also inducted that same year. And the story goes that Robert Mondavi actually visited with my grandfather before establishing the Robert Mondavi Winery, just to give you, some historical perspective.
Yeah, Barbara, we're getting a question from someone here that says, how did your grandfather decide to go to the Finger Lakes in the first place?
That's a really good point. A good question. He arrived, like so many other immigrants, actually came through Ellis Island and arrived in New York, not speaking English, unfortunately, taking menial jobs, just trying to learn the language, and had heard about the Finger Lakes, had heard about the Geneva Experimental Station affiliated with Cornell. And I actually, it kind of shows my age a bit, but I met the bus driver at a tasting, gosh, how many years ago was that? I don't know, 30 years ago or so, 30, 40 years, probably 40 years ago, who he claims was the man who encouraged my grandfather to go up to Geneva. So it was a pretty amazing story. But anyway, he did take a bus up to the Geneva Experimental Station. They all thought he was crazy of his ideas of trying to grow vinifera. But he did see what he felt was the perfect climate and ideal soil for producing world-class wines, the vinifera grapes. It reminded him of Austria and Germany, and so he felt that was the right fit.
Great.
So I hope that answered the question.
So for sure.
So, and yeah, please feel free if you have any other questions. It sounds like they get fielded through Lauren, which is great, but I love to, I will do my best to try and answer them. So the winery is located on the west side of Keuka Lake, overlooking the bluff. Truly beautiful area. I know I'm a little biased, but it is, I think Keuka is definitely the most picturesque because it is a bit smaller than Seneca and Keuka, and you can actually bike or drive around the lake, and water is really nice and clean, great for swimming. And anyway, so we overlook the bluff, which is the deepest part of Keuka Lake. So that creates an even better microclimate for us as far as being able to keep the temperatures in the vineyard a little bit warmer in the winter, and to keep it just a little bit cooler in the spring to prevent the buds from emerging too early. And that's a very sensitive stage also. But we also now own some vineyards on the east side of Seneca Lake. And so on Keuka, we have a lot of shale in our soil, again, going back to the receding glaciers. And that imparts that our soil is more acidic there, which the combination of the shale and the more acidic soil imparts this pronounced minerality quality. I think we'll notice that when we start to taste the wines. The Seneca Lake vineyard is a richer soil, deeper soil. The focus, riper fruit, less of that minerality, and we grow quite a variety of different grape varieties on both the Keuka vineyard and the Seneca. The sustainability, even though that term was not used, but the idea of it was something that was very important right from the beginning for both of my grandparents. My grandfather always said, we had ponds on the vineyard at Keuka, that he never wanted to use anything in the vineyard that would hurt the fish in the pond. We've since become even more sustainable by growing cover crops. We don't irrigate, we're all dry farmed, and we installed solar panels. So that's where we receive our energy, solar, we're solar powered. So the Keuka Lake Vineyard, again, you can see the great amount of shale in the soil. So I wanted to show this picture for a number of reasons. My niece, again, Megan Frank, our fourth generation, she had the wonderful idea of highlighting the senior Frank women who really helped the winery get established. And in fact, Eugenia was my grandmother, so Dr. Frank's wife, and she was the one who encouraged my grandfather to pursue his PhD. So had it not been for her, we would definitely not be here right now. So so my niece just established this Helm series where so the Eugenia, these are the grapes going into the Eugenia are from our oldest Riesling vines on Keuka Lake. So really imparts that terroir, that sense of somewhereness from the Keuka vineyard. Wonderfully dry, crisp, with lots and lots of minerality. And we have the Margaret Riesling, the Hilda Chardonnay, and the Lena red blend. Okay, I think we are. Oh, I thought I would show this slide real quick. Not everyone has been to a vineyard, certainly, different stages, probably even fewer, have just a sequence of what goes on in the vineyard. We typically see bud burst in mid to late May. Flowering occurs in June, fruit set typically July. And then these are actually for our sparkling grapes, Chardonnay, that were harvested September 10th. For the still wine Chardonnay grapes, those are harvested later. And here an example of one of our old Chardonnay vines. So you can see that the size of the trunk. And I think with that, we are finally getting to our first wine. So thank you for your patience.
Have you been drinking all along, Barbara? That was another amazing thing about her. She was always like, I don't know, she always had that glass. I'm like, but she still was amazing. I don't know. I mean, but you sipped it. I
think you have a selective memory, Laura.
No, but you were an amazing student. You studied hard, but you knew how to. You inspired me with your class about wine. So anyway, that was a compliment.
Well, cheers, everyone. Let's talk about the 2019 Chardonnay. So Chardonnay is truly the chameleon of grape varieties. It's grown practically around the world nowadays, but it has its roots in the Burgundy region of France, including the Chablis region. It also is a very important component to Champagne. In fact, we use 100% Chardonnay for our Blanc de Blanc sparkling. And also it's a very important component for our traditional Brut blend. So the Chardonnay This is 100% Chardonnay. And when I mentioned the chameleon aspect of it is that it can be fermented in cool stainless steel, retaining all of the fruit. It can be fermented in French oak barrels or other types of oak. It can undergo malolactic fermentation. So that's what I mean by that chameleon aspect, is that the winemaker can really go in a lot of different directions with Chardonnay. We're actually producing 3 different styles of Chardonnay at Dr. Frank's. The Dr. Frank is our classic benchmark Chardonnay, and the way we achieve this style is we ferment the majority of it in cool stainless steel. In this case, about 53% of it, and by fermenting it in cool stainless steel, we retain those lovely cool climate Chardonnay attributes. The yellow apple, that bright acidity is retained, and a portion of it is fermented in what we like to use used French oak barrels, because we never want the oak to overpower that cool climate elegant fruit. And then we blend these components together to try and find that perfect blend of the balance of the best of both. So because we're a cool region, our wines tend to be very elegant in style, very food friendly. As the grapes are ripening in the vineyard, the sugar content goes up, and that is then fermented into alcohol. So the warmer the region, the more sugar, and the greater the amount of alcohol. And the flip side with the acidity. Cooler regions will retain more of that natural acidity. So because of our wonderful climate in the Finger Lakes, that cool region, we have a beautiful ripening. This wine actually 13% alcohol. That's on our higher end. Many of our whites are between 11 and 12% typically. This was a bit of a riper year, but we've retained that really nice acidity as well. So, but we also produce our Salmon Run, which is our second label. We produce an unoaked Chardonnay, and then one of our Helm series, Hilda, who was my aunt. We have a more forward oaked style of Chardonnay. So we have the 3 sort of classic styles of Chardonnay. This particular wine received 90 points from the Wine Enthusiast, which is really, really exciting for us. When you think about the sea of Chardonnay out there that's produced around the world, so that we're quite proud of that. And not only did we receive 90 points, but they described it as a best buy. So we are getting hints of the vanilla from that French oak. Again, that lovely appley character, a little bit of a touch of honey, but always with that nice crisp acidity adding to the finish, the length on the palate.
We're supposed to be drinking right now.
Mm.
Okay. Oh no, I've already started. Okay, so
Cheers, please. Yeah. Any comments or questions so far, or about the wine, or what? Anything so far?
It's lovely. It's lovely.
Great. Thanks.
Put your comments in the chat box.
So yeah, I mean, Chardonnay has gotten a bit of a bad rap because in the past, and still to a certain extent currently, but certainly in the past, the big oaky, buttery Chardonnays were flooding the market. And I've had so many people at consumer tastings come up to me, and they weren't sure if they wanted to try the Chardonnays. And I always try and encourage them to give it a taste, and invariably they love it. And especially when you think of certain foods, I mentioned the Gruyere cheese, but for me, roast chicken. And whenever I'm thinking food and wine pairings, it's also helpful. It's always helpful to go back to the sort of the source of where the grapes originated. So in this case, as I mentioned, Burgundy, there are lots of cream, mustard sauces, and so you can see how those flavors, some tarragon and rosemary, how those would would pair well with a Chardonnay. Certain people love lobster with Chardonnay. I personally prefer Riesling, but a lot of people really love the Chardonnay with it.
We're getting a
So,
question about distribution of your wine. I'm sorry, I'm gonna, because you're just gonna, if you don't mind interrupting.
please, I don't mind interruptions at all. I love questions. And yes, we are distributed in over 30 states and actually a couple of foreign countries right now,
Great,
but still family owned. Fourth, as I mentioned, fourth generation.
great.
Any other questions on the Chardonnay, or shall we move on?
Yeah, we
to
have some questions about pairing, but I think that you
Okay.
you answered those questions.
Okay, we can get back to pairing also
Great.
when we as we continue. So Riesling, many of you might have heard about clones. Particular, we hear a lot about Pinot Noir clones from Oregon, the Willamette Valley in particular, but these are just different pictures of some Riesling clones that we work with. We also work with clones of other varieties. So clones are basically, it's the same variety, but they have slightly different characteristics. I just thought I would kind of put that out there. Okay. So moving on to the next white is the 2019 Dry Riesling. So it's the Riesling that really put the Finger Lakes on the world wine map. We have the perfect climate, the ideal soil for producing world-class Rieslings. We're producing about 5 different styles of Rieslings right now, from bone dry to sweet and bubbly, 2 types of bubblies actually, but all in that classic méthode champenoise. But if you had to pick one wine to really describe Dr. Frank's, I would pick the Dry Riesling as, if you have to just choose one what would describe our winery, our vineyard, our winery, it would be the Dry Riesling. Dry Rieslings are considered the most versatile white wine, especially when you consider that they can be made completely dry, meaning lacking any sweetness, to very, very sweet, and every level in between. The key thing though, the best Rieslings are produced in a cool region. You need the acidity from a cool climate to balance the inherent fruit of the grape. That's where they really shine. That's where you really see the essence of Riesling. And although the Chardonnay Chardonnay grape is often manipulated, whether it be barrel age or barrel fermentation or malolactic fermentation, in the case of Riesling, you really get the sense of where it's grown, that terroir, that sense of somewhereness, because it was fermented, did not see any oak, fermented in cool stainless steel. So you're getting that true essence of not only the grape, but of the vineyard. In this case, it's both. We blend some of our fruit from the Keuka estate with the Seneca fruit. So the Keuka estate imparts that lovely pronounced minerality, hints of lime zest. The Seneca portion, more of the riper fruit, more of the stone fruits, the apricots, the peaches coming through.
Barbara, as you're sipping, we're getting Richard Weiss has arrived, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only. Hello, Richard from California, a very old friend of mine, and he's got a good question here. Would you say it's closer to Alsatian Riesling than German?
I would say yes. We are also producing a semi-dry Riesling, which might remind you more of a German Riesling and a reserve Riesling, which is even sweeter than the semi-dry. Those I feel are more Germanic in style, but I think this dry Riesling is more reminiscent. I mean, obviously our soils are very different, but more reminiscent of an Alsatian.
And poor Richard did not order wine in time, so he's going to have to just memorize, his taste buds will have to memorize your answer, and then I'm sure he's going to run right out. He lives in San Francisco area, Bay Area, so he should find your wines there, right?
Yeah, yes, and we can either ship directly, or we also are available in California. It's about our third biggest state as far as distribution right now, so which is a lot of fun.
That's great. This is wonderful.
Thank you.
So Richard says they live in Sonoma, so they have no shortage of wine, I guess. But yeah,
maybe not as much in the way of Riesling out there. But so next up, as please, enjoy the two whites so far. We've got that brief 2-minute film, and then we'll circle back afterwards and start talking about the reds.
Great, Barbara. And their website is wonderful.
Okay.
And there's a wonderful book about their family history, which I highly recommend.
Oh, thanks. Okay, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, good grape variety are not good enough for Americans. You Americans deserve only excellence.
In a time when nobody thought it was possible to grow vinifera, Konstantin proved them wrong.
This is my duty as scientist, and this is my duty as American patriot.
At the age of 63, most Americans would be thinking of retirement at that age, and he was building a winery from the ground up. He was a PhD in viticulture, and he pioneered the introduction of the European wine grapes to this region.
Most of us are doubters in life, and it takes a few believers like a Henry Ford, and I don't want to compare my father with the Henry Ford, but he pulled something off that people thought was not possible.
He never really viewed the winery as a business venture. He viewed it as an experimental station and wanted to prove to the world that we could grow the classic vinifera European grapes.
I have introduced these grapes here from Europe, only excellent. From Germany, Riesling and Gewürztraminer. From French, Pinot Gris, Pinot Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Cabernet Sauvignon. From Russian, Ricacitelli, Saperavi.
Visitors have told me wonderful stories over the years, and it's very rewarding to now see sometimes second and third generations of families that perhaps father or grandfather met my grandfather. And so it's wonderful to see that sort of loyalty.
And I think he'd be really pleased with the place that we're at right now. And it's a very exciting time. And it took a lot of hard work to get there, a lot of dedication.
I think that's what makes Dr. Frank's winery special, is the fact that we've got 4 generations of family ownership. And we have the luxury of dedicating ourselves as quality as our main goal. And we realize that, in the wine business over the long term, quality is really critical.
These wines are vigorous, are excellent. And this is future for America.
Oh, that was great.
Oh, I hope you all enjoyed it.
Oh, great. So fascinating.
No, don't want to do that. Okay, I'm just trying to get us to the next slide.
You have to go back to slides, daughter.
So we will be moving on to the Merlot as we just get back to our slides. Sorry for the delay. Actually, first we'll be talking about so a little more in depth the Seneca, our Seneca vineyards. The southeast corner of Seneca is actually known as the Banana Belt. I keep thinking we should probably come up with another name, but this particular part of the east side of Seneca has the warmest temperatures, so we get the greatest amount of ripening. And for us, it's kind of like insurance. If we have a hailstorm on Keuka, hopefully we won't have a hailstorm on Seneca, and vice versa. And also the fruit is different aromatics and different flavor profiles. But again, a deeper soil and more fruit forward, a higher level of ripeness and more pronounced fruit flavors. Just an example of some of our barrels for our reds. Actually, we are buying. We have bought a number of barrels from Opus One for our California friends out there. They want their French oak barrels brand new, and we prefer ours used. So it's a win-win all around. The Merlot now, I have the 2017, but we kind of switched midway to the 18, that they are more similar than they are different. The Merlot is a very important variety to the Bordeaux region of France, in particular what's known as the right bank, where Merlot and Cabernet Franc makes up the majority of the blends, in addition to the Cabernet Sauvignon, whereas on the left side of the left bank in Bordeaux, it's more Cabernet Sauvignon focused, and Merlot and Cab Franc and some other Bordeaux varieties are used in smaller amounts. Merlot is a great go-to red. The tannins are more restrained. It's got the hints of the plummy notes on the nose, more forward fruit, hints of the red cherry, violets, ripe and round.
I get a question here. Reds are very challenging for other Finger Lakes wineries. What's your secret?
Yes, that's a great question. We literally go through the vineyards and remove about half of the fruit of the red clusters. That, in addition to growing the reds in the warmest parts of the vineyard. In the case of the Cab Sauv, we've got on our Keuka estate, literally a stone's throw away from Keuka Lake. And there's a lot of gravel in that soil. So the gravelly shale-filled soil also helps absorb the heat from the sun and radiate it back to the clusters. So the location, the soil type, and going through the vineyard and literally removing about half the fruit. And that allows those remaining clusters to better more fully ripen. Yeah.
Great, excellent. We had a question regarding shipping to Europe or to other parts of the world.
Yes, so currently, I don't know if I remember, so we definitely ship to the UK, to Japan, to Aruba, to, I believe, the DR. All this information is on our website. If you click on list of distributors, obviously the focus is here in the States, certainly in New York, but Massachusetts is an important state. It's mainly domestic shipping, but we do have a handful. Which, yeah, you could definitely see on that. I should probably have these memorized, but I don't. but it is on our website.
We did have a question regarding price range.
Yeah.
If you just want to mention that.
Yeah. So the Chardonnay that was deemed best value, that I'm almost embarrassed to say how inexpensive it is at $14.99. I mean, to me, that's crazy. But there's a lot of Chardonnays out there, a lot of different qualities of Chardonnays out there. But and our Rieslings are typically $15.99. The reds, we are removing about half the fruit. The Merlot, I believe, is about $21. The Cab Sauv, a few dollars more, and it does vary by market. I know, like for instance, in Florida, that prices are higher. In Louisiana, they're a little higher. We've got to factor in the additional shipping costs. I'm not sure how the prices are in California, but generally speaking, I mean, we have the reputation of very high quality at fair prices. So, give or take a few dollars here or there, but those are kind of the starting points.
How are the 2020 shaping up in terms of quality and yield?
Oh, 2020 was a great vintage, really, really nice vintage. So yeah, exciting wines in the queue.
Great.
So any other comments? Oh, Merlot, I always like to talk about the Sideways movie back in 2004 with Paul Giamatti, and it kind of gave Merlot a bad name, and really boosted Pinot Noir sales. But in the meantime, Merlot is grown Washington State. Obviously, I mentioned Bordeaux. Also a lot grown in California, obviously, and other, and it's a very important variety for the Super Tuscans, which obviously fetch very high prices. But sort of the funny thing about that movie is that at the end, he's kind of drowning his sorrows with his prized wine of a 1961 Cheval Blanc from Bordeaux, which turns out is mainly Merlot. So it's kind of, someone was having fun there. I don't know, but it's just kind of a little geeky, little wine geek humor for me.
Someone says most of these wines are grown at higher latitudes on the West Coast of the United States and in Europe. Does the different day length matter?
There's so many variables that come into play: the day length, the nighttime temperatures, the obviously latitude is important, but the microclimate around the Finger Lakes. So many. I mean, I think I think I read if you compared our latitude, you would be like in Galicia, Spain. So obviously very different styles of wine being produced there. So yeah, lots of variables. It's I'm not sure if that answered the question.
Yeah.
Was that okay? Okay. Shall we move on to the Cab Sauv, the Cabernet Sauvignon?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Cabernet Sauvignon. Oh, I wanted to show you this slide. So red or black, technically they're called black grapes, but I mean, people mainly call them red grapes. So this is a slide of the Cabernet Sauvignon as it's going through what's called veraison, and that's when the red grapes start to turn color. But the interesting thing with red grapes is that most of the red grape varieties, and we're talking 90+% of the red grape varieties, are only the skins are red. And that's how we're able to make, so our high quality sparkling wines, which are, well, in our case, in our brew, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier are red grapes. But we use just a gentle pressing. So you're only getting the white pulp. You're not getting the pigment from the red skins. And so it's the skins of the red grapes impart the most of the aromatics, certainly the color, the tannins coming through, so this is mainly the 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon, again very important Bordeaux variety, also grown in other regions around the world. We grow our Cab Sauvs in the warmest parts of our vineyard, as I mentioned earlier. Here we're aging the Cabernet. Well, prior to that, so when we talk about daily manual punch down, so what is punch down? We're not punching the grapes. What happens is as the juice which evolves into must, or juice and must, starts to ferment, the skins start to move up to the surface. And because we want to extract the pigment, the flavor, the tannins from the skins, you do a practice what's called punching down. So you're literally taking like a huge cleaver, I guess, a wooden cleaver, and literally punching down the skins so that we're extracting more of the color and the flavors and tannins. You can also do this technique by literally pumping over the skins, but we like to do a more gentle punch down, and that's done a couple of times a day for a period of about 2 weeks or so. So with the Cabernet Sauvignon, again, here we're doing a lot of cluster thinning to get these grapes to more fully ripen. The nose, the aromatics, classic Cabernet Sauvignon with hints of currants, so those black fruit scents, little bit of some herbal notes, and again the vanilla from the French oak. Here we're giving the wine about 18 months in the used French oak barrels, as opposed to the 10 months for the Merlot.
How does the 218 differ from the 217 Trip Hammer wines? I guess this person only had the 2017.
The vintage of the Cab Sauv, of the Cabernet Sauvignon?
Yeah, she says, Elizabeth asks, how does the 2018 differ from the 2017 Triple Hammer wines? She only had the 2017.
17. Oh, I see. Well, more similar than they're different. 18 was a bit of a riper vintage, so getting a little more of that forward fruit. But those two vintages were, again, more similar than they are different. For me, the Cab Sauv is why I never became a vegetarian, at least not a full-fledger, because for me, this calls for steak. Steak calls for Cabernet Sauvignon, and Cabernet Sauvignon calls for steak. Not that you can't find wonderful vegetarian dishes, portobello mushroom, whatever, some wonderful, more forward, more intense cheeses. But if you like steak, Cabernet Sauvignon is definitely your wine. I don't eat it often, but when I do enjoy it. Any other questions or comments about the wine so far? I just have a few more quick slides. Anything else about the wines? Anyone pairing it with some aged Gouda? Also, some dark chocolate is, in fact, actually our Cabernet Franc and dark chocolate are really is a really lovely pairing. So this, just a couple of slides about our tasting experiences that we will be reopening this summer, hopefully spring, but certainly by the summer. Here we're doing, this is over at 1886, where we're pairing some locally sourced artisanal cheeses with some selected wines. And then we also have the 1886 experience, where we incorporate either a vineyard or a cellar experience, in addition to pairing specific wines with really beautifully prepared small bites. So we each month is different. We will typically showcase a local artist that is with the same theme of that particular month's theme of the wine and the food pairing, as well as the music is dovetailed also. And so these experiences have reached such, received such a great feedback that we were actually named one of the 10 best tasting rooms in the country by USA Today. Also, Wine and Spirits magazine named us one of the top 100 wineries in the world in 2019. This is the second time we received that accolade. And they also, we're quite proud of this as well. We were named one of the top 25 sparkling brands from a decade of tasting. So this really speaks, really a testament to our consistency. We've won a number of gold medals for our sparklers, and not only domestic wine competitions, international ones as well. We were also named Winery of the Year at the New York Wine Classic, including Best Red Wine for our Blaufränkisch. And Hugh Johnson, in his #1 best-selling wine guide, continues to give us 4-star ratings, the only New York winery that has continues to get 4-star ratings, and he sings the praises of our Riesling, Gewürztraminer, Pinot Noir, our Cazzelli, and big shout out about our sparkling wines, our sparkling wines as well. So
Barbara got a question. My wine store in Poughkeepsie only carries your whites. Is there a reason?
Well, we do produce, again, because we're a cooler region, we definitely produce a lot more whites than we produce reds. All I can say is please ask for them, but we can always ship to their door if that's an easier alternative. We ship by UPS.
And we have a question. Your tasting room is open because we were there on our bicycles this summer. They, of course, all very COVID careful. I was very impressed with my experience was They have stations, they limit the stations to, I think, 6 people. You have to get a ticket first. But I love the stations. I thought it was really, and your folks are really friendly and fun, and yeah, it was really a nice visit. I think it was like 45 minutes. So it was really enjoyable.
Yeah, we got, thank you. We got a lot of really positive feedback. This was a progressive tasting where we had different stations set up. A lot of them were outside. So January 1st, we did have to shut down, and we haven't officially reopened, but I'm definitely spring, summer, we will be back on track. Yeah, the progressive tastings were really neat because we would focus on the viticulture, the sparkling wine. So people really enjoyed them. So I think even as we move back into a new normal, let's say, I think we'll be continuing with it, at least some of the ideas of that, continuing along with that.
Okay, so will the metal cap affect the taste over time? How long will these tasting bottles last with that sealing method?
Yes, so for these particular ones, we actually do these by hand. So these are really not meant to be aged for an extended period of time. The screw cap is that is a more proper seal. But yeah, these are not meant to really be aged. They're really meant to purchase them and enjoy them soon, let's say. This is a new development. Since we did shut down January 1st, my niece came up with the idea of these tasting kits, and this is the Vinifera Revolution kit. We also have an aromatic white kit and unusual grape variety kit. So we have other options. We're also offering some great incentives, free shipping on 6 bottles, which can be mixed and match any which way, and quantity discounts as well. So.
Also, Barbara, you used to talk a lot. I remember in college, you were really big on sparkling. You haven't really mentioned sparkling today very much. We're not tasting any sparklings, but that is your particular personal specialty, isn't it?
Yes. I used to be the head winemaker at Dr. Frank's in the late 80s, but now I'm focusing primarily on our sparkling wines. And so yeah, we're producing 5-6 different sparkling wines, depending on the vintage. All in the traditional méthode champenoise, the Blanc de Blanc, 100% Chardonnay. Our Brut is that traditional blend, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier. We have Blanc de Noir, Rosé. And then we have our Célèbre line, where we're producing, these are a little more fruit forward, where we're not aging them quite as long on the yeast. So the Célèbre is from 100% Riesling. It's a wonderful brunch wine with more pronounced residual sweetness, but still that nice acidity. A Célèbre Rosé with some residual sweetness, but also a Riesling Natur, which is has no added sweetness at all, and it's that was received some international shout out from Savour magazine recently. But all have really gotten some great accolades over the years.
People are loving these kits. And Elizabeth asks again, do you have a sparkling wine kit?
That we haven't done yet. It's a little more challenging because, as I mentioned, we are transferring them by hand, and the risk, of course, is losing some of the effervescence that we work so hard to achieve in that. But we'll see how, because it's not the first time that's been asked. So. And I love to talk about the bubblies, so I will. I'll see what we can do in that department.
Well, that sounds familiar. That's great.
Any other questions or comments? I'm hoping that you'll come visit us. Lauren's trips are fabulous, and I hope to join you and hope to see you at the winery. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my family wines, and I'm hoping you'll send Lauren a little love in the tip jar. Lauren and her colleagues. I know they've been working hard, and so many of us have had to pivot during these challenging times. And but I see a light at the end of the tunnel, and actually got my first shot yesterday. So,
Wow. How did you manage that?
you know, it's
Barbara's
if you
got some
ask, sometimes you get. You know?
Oh, and let me take like literally a minute just to talk quickly about the itinerary that we have in the Finger Lakes. You know, we started. It's really the way we design these tours, these domestic tours, and we've got several of them on the East Coast and in the Southeast and the West. And Barbara, I'll let you close the whole thing. But before everybody takes off, I just wanted to mention the itinerary. It's a 6-day itinerary. It starts in Ithaca. Up in New York State is just fantastic. I mean, first of all, you can't Ithaca, like you got to go to it, the word alone. We start and we stay at the Statler, which is a beautiful hotel run by the Cornell Hotel School. So we start out at the Statler Hotel at Cornell, and then we go pretty much at that point, we go west towards Watkins Glen and Hammondsport. And then we zigzag up Seneca, and we kind of take a little detour and after at Watkins Glen, we take a detour up to Keuka for a tasting at the Dr. Frank Vineyard. And then we go up along Seneca Lake to Geneva. And then we stay in Seneca Falls, which is, of course, famous for the women's suffrage movement. So every night where we stay is a fantastic, we stay in 3 different places. It's fantastic for its history alone. So, I mean, we have lots of wonderful stops along the way. From Seneca Falls, we come down the eastern shore of Lake Keuka. It's a gorgeous ride all along the lake. So we have a lot of lakeside rides, riverside rides, lots of, you know, of course, the bumper sticker Ithaca is gorgeous. I proudly have that on my little Volkswagen Bug. And it is gorgeous, as my scenery on the back of my head shows. It's, you know, we stop at Watkins Glen, which is amazing. And Ithaca itself has waterfalls and gorges. And from a geological perspective, from a historical perspective, from a vineyard perspective, I mean, it's really quite a destination. And it's interesting, the number of people that haven't even discovered it yet. So we're real excited about it, putting our heart and soul into this itinerary, and looking forward to seeing you. And we end the itinerary back at Cornell. We literally pedal across campus. So any Cornellians out there definitely should, or if you have friends who are Cornellians, they should go. And we do a walking tour of the campus, and we go to the ornithology lab, which is fantastic. So we're really packing it in with education and good food and good connections. So as usual on all of our Ciclismo Classico trips, I'll be doing a Q&A in a couple of weeks that will basically be focusing on this itinerary. And if you've attended this or have expressed interest in this itinerary, we'll be inviting you to that, and I'll be hosting that with more photographs of the area. But Barbara, do you have anything else to say?
No, unless there are any other questions. If not, thanks again for giving me this opportunity. We look forward to your visits.
Great.
Coming up this summer and early fall. And yeah, always great to reminisce about our fun time.
I know, I miss you,
Cornell
Barbara.
and Ithaca.
I know, I miss you, Barbara. Unfortunately, they tore down I don't know if you know that, but they tore down our
did.
house.
I know. How could they do that?
Oh, it was such a great house.
What were they thinking? What were they thinking?
Oh, it was a classic college town house. I mean, we had 8 women. Oh my God, you can imagine the trouble that we caused. We drove our landlords crazy, right? But we'll be setting up a follow-up email to this. We'll include links to Barbara's vineyard, some more information about the wine. Barbara, if you want in a follow-up email to just give me anything else you'd like to go out in this follow-up email. Really, thank you everybody so much for joining us on this Friday afternoon Ciclismo show. Check out our event page. We'll be including that as well, because we've got lots of fun stuff coming up. So it's been really nice to meet everybody. So I guess we'll sign off soon. Thank you all, and we'll see you soon, Barb, I hope.
Yeah, thanks again, and ciao.
Ciao everybody, hasta la vista, ciao, ci vediamo, a presto, ciao, ciao, ciao everybody.
Bye.